So that's something.
All right. So we should be good.
I think so. Let's make magic.
All right. So the alien enters the cantina. He looks for his target. The noise of the place is almost deafening. Guffaws and jeers from the patrons, as well as Figure and Dan and the modal nodes playing in the background. The smuggler owes Jabba a lot of money, and he plans to collect. Will he shoot the pilot if he needs to? He is worth more alive. This sets the scene for our show today. How about that intro music?
Sure thing.
Bounty hunting is a complicated profession.
This is Bounty Hunting Across the Galaxy.
All right, this is Todd.
And this is Ken. Welcome back to another great episode of Bounty Hunting Across the Galaxy with Todd and Ken. How have you been, my friend?
I'm doing great. Busy doing stuff, all kinds of Star Wars stuff, and trying to stay busy with all the other things in life, you know.
Like what? What are some of the things?
Oh, well, you know, the work and kids and stuff like that, but we don't want to hear about that. So I didn't get a lot of Star Wars stuff recently. I was thinking about adding a Mando rifle to my kit.
Okay.
As far as that goes, haven't really settled on one. Just kind of thinking whether I'm trying to go for a like more of a carbine or a long rifle, or so I've been just shopping as far as that goes.
When you say shopping, like shopping for 3D plans or just trying to get images to cobble something together?
A little bit of both, like,
Okay.
you know, because there's a certain amount of, I can print it or I could have somebody print it for me and make it. And depending on how the price balances out, you know, sometimes it's easier to get stuff going, to get somebody else to do the work for you and then just finish it. And then you can add it to your kit. Or, you know, sometimes it's easier just to put it on the printer and say, okay, but then I got to do all the print lines and the actual time printing and setting it up. And, you know, so kind of a little bit of both. I kind of like the DC-15 for a long rifle.
Okay.
But again, like I have the staff that I use, that stuff. So I don't know that I want 2 long items. But it would, the opposing thing would be like get an E11 or an A280 and just kind of put it on a sling and then I can put it under my arm or something.
Well, the other piece to consider with that is, you know, depending on the event that you're going to, you may decide this event I'm gonna carry around the rifle. This other event, or even this other section of the time, I'm just gonna be posing in place with your staff.
Yeah. I
Now,
don't know.
have not, at the risk of going full Mandalorian costume geek and losing 16 of our listeners in the process, have you considered possibly going for one of the brigades? Because one of the cool things about the Mando merch specifically is you can build an entry-level kit. You can build for lack of better words, a simple kit that becomes official, that gets you into the party, that gets you your Mandalorian number. You're now an official person who can troop at these events. And then what you can do is make upgrades to your kit, whether it's different pieces of armor, different weapons, different tools. You could have a pet, or you could have a droid with you, or whatever. And depending on those additional pieces, you could join different brigades.
Yeah. I mean, I've considered it. I haven't really done the research as to what, because obviously, like right now, I'm more melee because all I have is the staff. I don't even have a pistol with my set.
Mm-hmm.
So, I considered it, but I haven't really done the research enough to get into what I need to do to move to the next level.
Yeah, and there's bunches of different brigades. Like I said, there's the I don't know if it's Animal Tamer Brigade. There's one that might be up your alley. It's one where you're a slicer, or you're a you deal with droids, or you could do medium armor melee.
Yeah.
So you might need to add a couple different pieces of additional armor to your kit. I know that sometimes you have to have armor on your hands, or armor on your neck, more than just the collar or whatever. And so you could potentially get away with joining a brigade with a handful of additions without having to go necessarily overboard and redo your kit, or add 40 extra things.
Right. So I do have armor plating on my gloves for now.
Okay.
And of course I had thighs, but I eliminated them because they were more problematic than they were worth.
Okay.
So for my kit, so when I did get OM, that was right after I got rid of them, because they were this to one side or the other, or they were hitting my knees, or because I have the schnees,
Okay.
not the regular knees. So so they just became problematic, and every time it was like, oh, they're too big or they're too small, and I just, okay, they need to go.
Yeah, and unfortunately, some of those things you don't figure out until you've worn it around a bunch of times. Because it's one thing to design it and build it; it's something altogether different to actually have to wear it and maneuver in it.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. And like I have a back plate cut, but I don't have it molded.
okay.
So that's one thing that I do want to add at some point. But that's future things,
Okay.
It's always a little bit of this, a little bit of that,
You betcha. I think that's one of the other cool things about being in the mercs is, yes, like I said, you can enter in with a simple kit, and over time, as your skills improve, or as you meet more people, because you had said you weren't sure if you wanted to build it or buy it, you might meet someone who says, you know what, I'm done with this blaster. I don't want to carry this rifle around anymore. I don't want to throw it away. Hey, are you interested in it? I'll sell it to you for 50 credits or whatever.
Yeah.
So and that can be your local group, or let's say you go to an event in another state, whether it's an armor party or another convention, and just you're gabbing with folks. And that's how I ended up getting my boots. So my
Oh,
boots
yeah.
for my kit, they're straight up motorcycle boots,
Okay.
with like the rubber toe guard and that kind of stuff. Somebody brought them to an armor party and said, I don't want to throw these away. They don't necessarily go with the style of where my costume is now. Does anyone want them? And I'm like, okay, let me try them on. And lo and behold, they fit perfectly. So for $30, I managed to get a pair of full-on motorcycle boots that I've incorporated into my costume.
Very nice.
The zipper is on the inside of the boot. It's covered by a Velcro flap, so it's not seen.
Yeah.
And my pants go over the upper portion of the ankle quite nicely. So
Yep. Yeah, I have the zipper too on the inside, but it's just they're actually back far enough that nobody ever sees them.
nice.
So
And speaking of adding things, have you added anything to your collection recently?
not really. Just a lot of research. So
Okay.
trying to figure out what I wanted to do. So how about you? Do you add anything?
Yeah, so I recently won an award at work, and one of the gifts, so two gifts came with this prize, was a prime parking spot on the second floor of our parking garage.
Sweet.
Normally we have to park on the fourth floor or higher, and we're talking three parking spots from the elevator, but it's on the second floor, so I don't even need to use the elevator. It's right by the door. So that's one of the prizes. The other prize was actually a gift card. So what I ended up doing was using part of the money on the gift card to buy a season 1 Din Djarin flight suit.
Oh, okay.
So I'm going to use that for my custom post Imperial kit. And I ended up finding, and I know I said I wasn't going to buy any new action figures for 2025, but
Right.
So before you call me a hypocrite, call me a liar. These were gifts. Like my organization gave me a prize, and I used that prize money to get a couple new action figures. So I got the BTE murder droid
Nice.
and the Triple
And
Zero.
000,
Yeah.
nice.
So both of them, I happened to find them at a GameStop while Heather and I were out and about. So those have been added to my collection, and I also have a new Star
A new
Wars
shirt.
T-shirt
Very
with
nice.
lots of folks from the cantina. A couple
And
of
And a very familiar face.
a very familiar face, absolutely. And I did add a couple extra books to the collection. I got one that's called. I want to make sure I'm reading the title properly. The World According to Star Wars, and what was the other?
Okay.
Yeah, that was the main one. And we were at a vintage shop. I had sent you a picture of a painting book with a DVD, and I
Right.
asked the guy if they ever get in Starlog magazines, and so he said he's gonna, be on the lookout for them if folks bring their collections in and let me know. So those are the kinds of things that I've added to my collection, or my hoard, if you will, since we got together last.
So I have to ask you, do you have Dr. Aphra?
I do. I do have
Oh,
Dr.
okay.
Aphra. Yeah,
Okay.
I have at least one Dr. Aphra. I might have two, but I do know that I have at least one of them. One of her, rather.
So, and not to sidetrack too much, but I actually grabbed the coloring book that I told you about last time.
That's cool.
So, and I noticed it's very similar to yours because it has the same pictures on here.
Yeah. And you said that's the hardcover version, right?
Yeah, this one's a hardcover,
Okay.
and this is 100 images to inspire creativity and relaxation.
Yeah, there's
So,
and this is going to sound wild, or maybe not, considering the audience. I like the images so much that I would rather photocopy them and color the photocopy than actually color in the book.
no, I actually color in it. So,
Okay. Make sure you sign it, because if somebody buys it at a vintage shop later, they're going to say, "Oh, look, I got this from Todd."
never. Maybe Tony will get my book.
Yeah, exactly.
So,
Have you done anything? You said you've been busy with stuff, but anything Star Wars related at all?
so I've been working on some of the miniatures. I haven't really done anything out and about really. And I grabbed a couple here. I'm working on he's a little dark. The droid, the Magna Guard.
Okay.
He's a Magna Guard, and I actually brought up. These are obviously not quite finished, but one of the Mandalorians that I'm
that's
working
cool.
on. Yeah, it's a little out of focus, but I don't know. It just doesn't like the focus, I guess. But yeah, I got a couple of them here, and I like some of these. Some of these guys they actually have jetpacks they're standing on the smoke.
Oh, that's fun.
Yeah, so yeah, I've been working on them a little bit. Been painting a lot of Warhammer. My son Logan's been like big into Warhammer right now, so I'm trying to kind of feed that while it's prime.
Yeah, you betcha.
So, keep him in it, and we actually got a couple games in that we played and stuff like that. So we've been kind of busy.
Well, any reason it's not Star Wars related, but speaking of Warhammer, your other show celebrated its first year anniversary. Congratulations!
It did. Yes, thank you. Yeah, and we're going to be going strong. I actually started a new segment, not last episode, because I did like what I did for the whole year, but the one before that. So the intro miniature boxes are called combat patrols, and they're roughly 500 points. And without understanding the game, it's probably meaningless, but every game you have so many points to spend on the miniatures that you bring in your army.
Okay.
So the next step, combat patrol is like the entry level. The next step to that is crusade. So I'm actually going to go through all the factions, combat patrols, and what I would add to bump them up to crusade level force, which is 1,000 points. So I actually recorded my next one just before we got on here. So
okay, so you've been a busy bee.
Yeah. Yes, Thursday nights are always busy for me. So but I
And
like
so,
it that way.
so when you do that episode, or when you did that episode, did you build it in such a way like this is for the newbie? So I'm going to describe how to take this and advance it or prepare it for that, like you said, that next level.
I try to go mid-range. So
Okay.
like if you've already the combat patrols are like $150, so you're already invested enough. So if you have that box, I kind of assume that you have a little bit of an idea what you're doing.
Okay.
So I'm trying to go from this is your entry level. Where do I go to step up to the next level?
Gotcha. Okay.
So I'm trying to keep it very simple and easy and not get overwhelmed with all kinds of rules and stuff like that. Just these are the miniatures that I would buy if I was playing that faction to bump it up to the next level.
Yeah, because not that I've ever lied to you before, but I'm going to be, really brutally honest with you. There's times I listen to some of your shows, like, I'm glad somebody knows what he's talking about, because it's really, it can be really confusing or really, really in depth with the level of, like you said, rules and all that kind of stuff. So it's amazing to me how involved a quote unquote game can be.
It's weird because when I've been playing since '95. So almost 30 years. So it's hard for me to take myself back to when I started.
Okay.
Plus the game is very different from what it was back then. So I try to go off that okay, I'm not a basic beginner, but I'm like the next step.
Yeah.
I'm going to record some YouTube videos that are like how to play like each step of the game, like movement and shooting and
Okay.
close combat and stuff like that. But that's coming. I haven't gotten there yet. It's a matter of setting up the table and getting everything situated, and of course that I'm going to have to script so that I know what I'm talking about when I do it.
Yeah, and you are the production crew. So you're the lighting guy, you're the sound guy, you're the prop guy, you're the only thing that you might not necessarily be, which you might be, I don't know, is the craft services. So
I'm pretty much everything. So
okay.
I mean, I can steal some of the boys' miniatures if I need to do that, but I have enough of my own that I could probably get away with most of it.
So I recorded the next episode of the Rambling Star Wars Fan, but I haven't put all the video bits together, because one of the things I'm learning as I work on this sort of stuff is doing a podcast is super easy. Turn on a microphone and talk for a little bit, and even if I have to edit it, it's just editing sound. But putting together a video, especially the kinds of videos or the kinds of shows that I've been working on, it's much more involved. So finding little photographs or clips or whatever that I can tuck in to make the video a little bit more interesting. So I did record my episode. It's going to be released soon. I'm hoping to get it done. If not by Saturday, hopefully by midweek next week. And it's not going to be, but it is about nostalgic nuggets that are tucked into the Skeleton Crew. If you don't know what a nostalgic nugget is, you should listen to the show.
It's your
and one of the other things that's happened recently is I was lucky enough to be invited back to the Bantha Milk podcast. They did they do this episode every once again called Around the Dejeric Table. And so however many hosts are on, everybody gets to ask a question that then everybody answers. So this particular episode, it was 4 hosts, 4 questions, plus some bonus ones in there. And the question that I asked everybody was, if you could go to one of the pleasure places in Star Wars, like Jabba's sail barge or Morlana 1 or Dryden Voss's yacht, where would you go and why? And if you want to know what my answer is or was, you should go over there to Bantha Milk Podcast and listen to the show. And I'm sure that they would love to have you. And I'm not talking about just you. I'm talking about all the folks that are watching this video or listening to this episode. They'd love to have you go and check it out. It's really fun. It's amazing how simple it can be, just asking each other silly questions related to Star Wars.
Oh, that's fantastic.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Which really brings us, speaking of silly, brings us to the topic of tonight, which is this magical green guy that I'm wearing on the front of my shirt. And I'm curious that why in the world, or why in all of Jakku, would you want to do an episode about Greedo? Because this was your idea. I mean, let's be truthful. This is what you had thought about and suggested.
I mean, to me, I thought it would be a great start for us. I mean, this green scale alien with big eyes and 2 sets of ears is the first bounty hunter we were ever introduced to in Star Wars. He's the first time that we've ever saw a bounty hunter in all of Star Wars. I thought that would just be like a great way to kind of round out the fact that we don't just do Mandalorians here.
Yeah, because this is bounty hunting across the galaxy for crying out loud. So we might as well talk about some of those non-Mando hunters. And what's also cool from my perspective, thinking about this character, is I think Greedo is a fantastic example of a character that started off with a seemingly small part. I mean, had some voice lines in the first movie before he met his end, and since then he's shown up in a whole bunch of other stuff.
He has.
You know, they've given him additional bits to his story. He's been the subject of a couple short stories. He's showed up in the comic books, and he's even been in some of the Lego video games.
Oh yeah.
So he's been around. So
yeah.
where do you want to start off the story with this Rodian, as they call him?
So I thought, so the thing that really kind of grasped me to him is because he's only in the movie for a very short time, but he has 2 very long backstories that don't match together. And
you don't say.
I think one of the coolest parts about that is both of the stories are very believable and very different. I mean, so I'll get into the first one here. In the original Legends story, they had a couple books, which were the tales from Jabba's palace, but this one was Tales from Mos Eisley. Okay, and it's the story called A Hunter's Fate. And basically, a young Greedo leaves the jungle planet of Rodian, which is where he was from, with his mom and his brother to escape from the clan wars that were pressing on his homeland. So they just wanted to get out of all that trouble. They traveled to the planet of Narshada, which is in the same area, but far enough away from Rodian. That's where he was introduced to the bounty hunter profession. Now, of course, he is a teenager at this point in time in the story. He actually got his chance to become a bounty hunter when he killed Gorm the Dissolver, who is a droid bounty hunter or a cyborg bounty hunter, depending on the story that you're reading. So I found a different entry for him that I was like, he's not a droid, he's a... Okay. But anyway, but in the actual story, he was a droid bounty hunter, and he was trying to kill 2 other bounty hunters. So Greedo shot Gorm in the back and kind of dissolved him.
Which you would think that bounty hunters would be a little bit more noble than that.
Yeah, but I mean, he was just a kind of a punk kid in the story. So, I mean, it kind of fits the storyline for him. He was just I think when the story started, he was like 14, like human years.
Okay.
So, I don't.
Who had fallen in with the wrong crowd.
Yeah. So he definitely fell in with the wrong crowd. So these 2 guys were so thankful that they helped them from Gorm, that they took him to Tatooine to meet Jabba. In the process, before they actually left Narshada, he actually had a run-in with a certain Corellian pilot and his Wookiee sidekick. And Han actually conned a Rancor skin jacket, which was Greedo's pride and joy, from him for some power converters so that they could get off the planet. So when Greedo got to Jabba's palace and found that there was a bounty on Han Solo, he signed up for it right away. And the story was actually pretty quick. He kind of just found Solo and Mos Eisley, followed him into the cantina, and never came back out.
Well, sometimes those sketchy bars on backwater planets are
Yeah,
the last place you end up, literally and figuratively.
yeah. So the other opposite end of that is in the newer version. He left Rhodia at an early age. He was actually born in 44 BBY. Now, just so everybody knows, BBY is before the Battle of Yavin. I'm sure most people know that, but just in case you don't. So he was actually a lot older in what's canon when the fateful day in Mos Eisley occurred. So he was 44 instead of being like 15. His family left Rhodia for similar reasons, but moved to Tatooine. And there, he actually was at the Boonta Eve race where Anakin won the race over Sebulba. And he was so mad about what happened, he thought that Anakin cheated somehow and actually tried to attack Anakin. And if I don't know if you know, but there's actually a deleted scene where Qui-Gon Jinn separates the two of them. It didn't make it into the movie, but that's kind of good because I think that would change the story up a little bit anyways. And there's also a different version where Wald, who was Anakin's Rodian friend that was in the movie, separated them. So there's a little bit of difference there. But either way, he got mad at Anakin. Him and Anakin almost went at it in a fight.
As kids.
As kids. So I'm sure that wouldn't have ended up well for poor Greedo there, but I guess fate was on his side that day.
Yeah, and once again, going back to kind of what I was talking about. So if we look at this not in story chronology, if we look at this in our chronology, when these things came out, it was A New Hope first.
Right.
That work that George and all the makers put out there for us. So they were working on it in the mid 70s. It comes out in 1977. That's where we see Greedo in the Mos Eisley cantina. He bumps into Han Solo, and as they say, the rest is history. Then all of these other things happen. So these other stories are written. Even the fact that 3 additional movies were created. The prequels. Right. So Phantom Menace, Attack of the Clones, and Revenge of the Sith, which is celebrating its 20th anniversary this year, which still to this moment blows my mind.
I know, I can't believe it.
20 years, and yeah, I mean 2 decades that this movie has been in existence. But I think it's going back to what I was saying about Greedo, it's a fantastic example of the world that continues to grow around these Star Wars characters. So someone who is on the screen for minutes, not hours or even dozens of minutes, but a few minutes, ends up getting more attention, getting more development, getting more screen time or book time or page time.
Yeah.
And to me, it also highlights the fact. So I hear some people when they talk about the sequel trilogies, or sequel trilogy rather, that the sequel trilogy would have been so much better if they had a plan. We look back at all of the other stuff. They didn't have a plan, like at least not one that we would necessarily, solidly look at as a plan. I don't think when George put this stuff together in the mid 70s, he was thinking about having, young Greedo show up at a pod race.
No, I'm sure he
You know,
didn't. I'm
so it's
sure
like,
he wasn't even thinking about pod racing at that time.
no, not really. I mean, even though not in the 70s, was thinking about pod racing in the 80s, but it was a totally different kind. It was more speeder races,
Yeah.
because there was actually an episode of Star Wars the Droid cartoon where there was a race that Boba Fett was actually involved in, and it wasn't a pod race, but more it was speeders. But
Hmm.
but it, once again, I think it's a fantastic example. Greedo's a fantastic example of, just because you see a character on screen for just a little bit, that doesn't mean that they're done. That they can go back in
Right.
time and give them more story, or they can tuck them into other things along the way. And so when we look back at Greedo's history, going back to just the scripts, when he first showed up in the script, didn't even have a name right away. I
No.
mean, on the page, it was just alien. That's what it was, just alien. And we
Correct.
know, everyone who's watched Star Wars knows, the cantina is filled with aliens,
Right. Absolutely.
wall to wall aliens. And even that's an interesting thing to think about, because they actually filmed two different cantina scenes. It ended up being the same scene in the movie, but they were filmed in two different places with some of the same characters. So originally, when they put together the cantina scene, it was filmed in England, and George wanted it to be wall to wall weird, wall to wall aliens, because up until that point in the movie, the only aliens that we saw were sand people and Jawas.
Correct.
And we didn't even see any of their faces. But as soon as they walked into the cantina, it's weirdness as far as you can see.
Oh yeah.
And so they filmed some stuff there, and the costume didn't work the way. Not all the costumes worked the way that George wanted. The room wasn't as filled as they wanted, so they ended up filming some additional scenes after George Lucas and the team came back to California. And one of the ways that you can tell the difference, I'm going to share my screen for a moment, or a few moments. This is one of the screen used costumes from A New Hope. And you'll notice that in this particular version of Greedo, he's got these long suction cup fingers. So this
Right.
costume was worked on by Stuart Freeborn. He had started working on this and some other folks, and then Stuart ended up getting sick, and some other people worked on it. But this set of hands made it really hard to hold a blaster. Oops, I didn't mean to make it that small. And just as a funny not coincidence, which is a funny piece. This is in a pop culture museum in Seattle, Washington, and right next to it is some Terminator props. So it's not even a Star Wars section, but this is screen used stuff from 1977's New Hope.
Wow.
Greedo originally got his start. The idea for Greedo came from a commercial that Stuart Freeborn had worked on. So you can see that the eyes for this little alien person on the left were the same eyes that ended up being in the Greedo mask.
Even the ears are kind of the same.
Yeah, similar. I mean, the Greedo's ears stick out a little bit further than our buddy here on the left hand side, but yeah, you can definitely see the relation between them.
Oh yeah.
This is a bunch of those cantina aliens with our buddy Greedo way up here in the background. Once again, those really long suction cup fingers.
Yep.
And this is Stuart Freeborn's wife, and I believe this is his son here. And I don't remember who all of the cantina alien characters are, and I should know, but here's our buddy, Snaggletooth here in the side.
Right.
And then here's George. This is on set in California, and one of the ways that we can tell that this is the set in California is the fingers are different.
Yeah, not as long.
Yeah, they're a little bit more stubby, and so it allows Greedo to hold the blaster a little bit better. And this costume at this point, and I forgot to mention it earlier, but Greedo is actually worn by more than one actor. So over in England, it was worn by a gentleman named Paul Blake.
Okay.
And when they came over to California, it was actually worn by a lady. Her name. I want to make sure I'm pronouncing her name properly. It is Maria de Aragon, not to be confused with
Okay.
Aragorn from Lord of the Rings.
Right. They're a little different.
They're a little different. And Maria had a near death experience dressed up as Greedo.
Oh,
So
really?
that mask, that rubber mask, went all the way over her head. It had a slit in the back that closed around her head. And at one point, she was having a real hard time getting oxygen into the mask. And so she actually, made some frantic motions, and George came over and helped her take the mask off.
Wow.
Yeah, so it was quite wild. And there was originally some animatronics in the mask. They wanted the mouth to be able to move to show that the character was speaking, but the animatronics didn't work as well as they wanted to. So what they ended up doing was using a clothespin. They attached the clothespin to the lips inside, and Maria squeezed the clothespin with her mouth to open and close
Are you
Greedo's.
serious? I didn't know that.
Yeah, that was one of the rumors I recently read about it. And so here's some more, on set pictures, once again with those shorter, stubbier gloves. And I think one of my favorite pictures, here's Maria here getting the mask on. One of my favoriteest pictures of Maria as Greedo, her in the high heels.
Oh, yeah.
I know
That's
shoes are a big thing in Star Wars. I mean, Tarkin wore, comfortable bath slippers when he was filming
Right.
his scenes.
Fuzzy slippers.
Fuzzy slippers, because the boots were too uncomfortable for him.
Right.
Yeah, so it's just it's amazing to think back to how they had to put these things together to do the things that they wanted to do, so that that it would show up on screen in the best possible way.
Yeah.
And over time, this, and many people who pay attention to Star Wars know that it wasn't ever really done in George's eyes. Hence
Right.
the infamous "Who shot first?" And I did find a cheeky definitive answer.
Okay.
And I think this is the wonderful scene. This was in England, and that's Paul Blake in the costume, and there's
Okay.
our buddy Harrison Ford. And I think this picture was taken while George was working on the Phantom Menace, perhaps, or at least during the prequel era.
Yeah.
And he shot first.
Han shot first. Yep.
And
I guess if George is wearing it, it's got to be true, right?
yeah. And speaking of George, this was a wonderful cameo. So George was in the Phantom. No, he was in Revenge of the Sith as Senator Papanoida. And in Star Wars: The Clone Wars, there was an episode where Greedo kidnapped Papanoida's children, or one of his children.
Right,
And
his
so,
son.
yep. So we see Greedo here in the cartoon form, with George Lucas also in cartoon form.
Nice.
Once again, this was at first a nameless alien who has now done so much more throughout the years. So there's definitely a lot of honor and respect that goes to this green-skinned Rodian.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of unbelievable how much information there is just on one character with so little screen time.
Yeah.
I mean, just like Boba Fett. I mean, like, he was only in a few minutes, a few lines in The Empire Strikes Back, and there's a whole culture around him.
Yeah. I mean, I don't even know the number of thousands of folks who are part of the Mando Mercs, let alone the folks who aren't in the Mando Mercs who will dress up like Boba Fett.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's even just the off-screen stuff. I mean, you had mentioned that they gave Greedo a family. They gave Greedo, this history. They even went so far as to describe the species, the Rodian species. And so what are some unique things about this green-skinned species called Rodians?
Okay, so Rodians are originally from a jungle planet called Rhodia. It's in the same sector as Tatooine and Narshada and stuff like that. They are considered cold-blooded reptilians. They're mostly green, but can also be found in red, blue, turquoise, and even purple.
A purple Rodian?
Yeah, apparently
Okay.
there's a purple Rodian. And there's actually a couple very famous red Rodians. They're almost aristocratic Rodians.
Okay. Fancy
So
pants is what you're saying.
yeah. So I guess the red ones get special stuff. I don't know. Greedo, the original Greedo, who was the alien, or he was actually called the Martian at times, originally was supposed to have 4 arms. And then, of course, with those fingers that he has, with the suction cups, they're actually meant for climbing in the jungles. So they climb up the trees or climb up water reeds or whatever, which helps them hunt on Rhodia, because they're essentially the apex predators of Rhodia.
And I think they ended up using that 4-armed alien, except instead of using the Greedo mask, I think that's the Cantina character that ends up having a face that looks like it has a gas mask attached to it.
Correct. Yes, they transferred it to him. So I did see I wanted to grab the picture and I completely forgot about it. They did have the picture of that gas mask alien with the 4 arms. But I don't know if he still has the 4 arms in the movie either, though.
I think so.
You think so? Okay.
Yeah, because I think there was even a toy made for that character with the 4 arms.
Cool. Yeah, I wasn't sure, and I was trying to find it, but I couldn't quite grasp it.
Because your fingers aren't long enough, and suction cups at the end.
Right. I can't climb that well. Of course, they have a lot of advantages that makes them excellent hunters. Those pupilless eyeballs that they have, those big black eyeballs, are actually can see in infrared. So of course that helps them hunt. They can find the creatures through all the vegetation and stuff in the jungles. Their pointed ears on the side, they can actually hear from like miles away because of their hearing. And then their antenna, what you would think are antenna, are actually like a second set of ears that also shift around, and not only do they hear, but they can sense vibrations in their surroundings. So not only like vibrations in like their surroundings, like like the leaves move or the wind blows something, but it can actually sense vibrations like in a person they're talking to. So like if you lie to them, they can actually, and you're nervous about it, they can actually sense that with those upper antenna ears that they have.
Well, I guess some of them are better than others because Han managed to take this one out at the bar.
Depending on the story, he's a not very good bounty hunter, or he's an exceptionally well bounty hunter. So I think either way, he just underestimated Han Solo,
which makes him an awful lot like Boba Fett then, if you think about it. Because when we think about the stories that we heard about Boba Fett, this incredible bounty hunter or whatever, and he got taken out by a stick to the jetpack.
Yeah.
Knocked into the Sarlacc.
Well, I mean, that's not too indifferent from his father. So
yep,
he got hit in the jetpack and lost his head over it.
Literally.
So, but the last thing and the most interesting thing that I wanted to add is, so Rodians have a particularly pungent, musky odor about all of them. So this works to discern different clans on Rhodia, like different ones smell different ways, and that's one of the ways they can tell, like, you're from that clan, you're from that clan. And they, of course, when they go to fight, their musk builds up, so they really stink. And of course, most races, it's terrible. It's like the worst thing. They don't want to deal with Rhodians because they stink so bad. The unfortunate part for them is Hutts actually enjoy their secretion as a tonic. They will actually put it in their drinks. It's like a rare and very, very special addition they can add to it.
I want to make sure I get this right. So they give off a smell
Yeah.
that many creatures find to be stinky,
Yes.
and the Hutts enjoy adding it to tea or whatever the drink is.
Right. They add it to their gin or their tea or their
Wow.
coffee.
So it's like a gin and stink.
It's
Gin and stunk.
It's almost like a delicacy to them, like
Wow.
like escargot or something like that.
Okay.
So the positive thing is there's a particular bartender that made a lot of money off of Han Solo finishing Greedo.
Oh, he harvested Greedo
and sold it to Jabba the Hutt.
Oh my goodness. That
Yeah.
I did not know. And I know a lot of useless things about Star Wars. I did not know that the bartender sold parts of Greedo.
Yep. He milked Greedo for his musk and sold it to Jabba the Hutt.
And is it called musk or is it like essence or?
I didn't actually catch what it was called. They just said it's a secretion.
Wow.
So yeah, so they actually milk the Greedo, the Rodian skin, and the Hutts enjoy it very much. So
oh my goodness. well, considering that we go to conventions and sometimes conventions can be filled with musky, stinky people, I also found, you might find this interesting, that there is actually a CRL for a Greedo costume.
That's awesome.
So if you're looking for the details of what actually is required for a Greedo, and this is from the 501st.
Okay.
He falls into the Bounty Hunters Guild detachment. So I mean they've got, several different detachments, and the one that we're looking at now is Bounty Hunters. And they even go so far as to let you know the color palette that's required for his costume, whether it's the vest or the flight suit. They give suggestions on the mask that you wear, even going so far as to talk about the hairs that are on the top of this head here.
Okay. Yeah, I'm sure they're pretty specific.
Yeah, so they talk about how much space is in between these little pieces right here on these are, I guess, quote unquote hairs on Greedo's head. Hands, and this is the elongated ones.
Okay.
And then there's another set that you could get that's skinny fingers. So the skinny ones are the ones that Paul Blake wore. The elongated ones that are a little bit stubbier, these are the ones that Maria wore.
Okay.
The jumpsuit, talking about the colors and the number of ribs that are on the pleats. And even going so far as to give you details about the vest. I mean, the vest, they're measuring these things in centimeters. The vest has to be 5 centimeters above this particular costume's belt. And there's a couple different levels of certification depending on how detailed you get. Even to the point of, that they have construction and alignment must match the Paul Blake costume. So they're looking at the costume that showed up in the movie that Paul Blake was wearing, if you're looking to get that level of specificity.
Wow, that's crazy.
So if you really want to go to the nth degree, becoming a member of the 501st in a Greedo costume could help you get to that nth degree.
I don't know that I could wear the mask. I mean, that being that close all the time.
Well, it's that close all the time, and it's rubber or latex.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's a Mando helmet's bad enough. You know, you can put fans in it and things like that. I haven't done that yet, so I don't know what that sensation is like. But I don't know if you could put, you know, fans in a rubber mask.
Yeah, I don't know. I
Was it
mean,
just
I guess you could put tubes up through it and kind of blow air in, but
okay, that makes, but yeah, so the fans wouldn't actually be up there, but you'd have a fan system somewhere on
something
your person.
in your chest or on
Yeah,
your shoulders or something.
yeah.
I
Which,
don't know. I don't know. I still don't know that I could do it. I think this just that being that close all the time would be too
yeah,
much
which
for me.
seems extreme. And you know, we mentioned how Greedo has gotten, you know, different bits and pieces, whether it's in a Lego video game or showing up in the Phantom Menace, like you mentioned as a youngster. There have been other Rodians as well. I mean, there was the cartoon Star Wars Resistance, and
That's right.
one of the pilots was a Rodian who
Right.
was voiced by I think Donald Faison. You know, so
Yeah.
the Rodians have gotten, you know, gotten some love and attention over time, even to the point where on the Galactic Star Cruiser at Disney World, you know, that immersive hotel, there was a main character who was a performer who was a Rodian. She would actually sing as part of her act.
Oh, really? That's
Yeah.
pretty
I don't remember her name. And
cool.
sadly, I was unable to go on the Star Cruiser on the Halcyon.
Yeah.
But you know, just another example of Rodians showing up in things beyond just A New Hope.
Do they have any down at Galaxy's Edge at all?
Well, that was the one. That would have been the
Okay.
one. But since they closed the Halcyon, they don't usually have. I mean, we don't get the benefit of seeing Rodians walking around the parks or
Okay.
anything like that.
That's what I was curious if there was any
Yeah.
walking around.
But what they've started to do, interestingly enough, they've started doing this at Galaxy's Edge in California. So West Coast Batu, they've had other characters show up. So in addition to like Kylo Ren and Vi Marati and even Chewbacca, they've had Boba Fett show up. They've had Din Djarin show up, and recently Luke Skywalker's been seen in Galaxy's Edge. You know,
Nice.
so and that's at Disneyland. So I'm wondering if they're going to start bringing other characters into Batu, into Galaxy's Edge on a a more consistent basis. I mean, they do
Right.
meet and greets in other places where you can, you know, get your picture taken with BB-8 or get your picture taken with Darth Vader, but they don't necessarily walk
Sure.
around Batu or Galaxy's Edge. But maybe in the not too distant future, we'll get some more of those characters.
I would imagine it's probably pretty hot in that costume
Yeah.
down in Florida.
Oh my goodness. You want to talk about musky?
Yeah.
You know, I'm not adding that to my tonic. No, sir.
No, definitely not.
Yeah, and I'm also not going to pay for it. Like I'm not going to pay extra for Rodian Musk. No, thank you.
No, thanks.
Yeah,
No. So
yeah. So for a character that got few minutes, like single digit minutes, we've been able to talk about him for almost an hour.
yeah, in fact, it's only been 1 minute and 17 seconds was his screen time.
Holy
So
moly!
yeah, I had to do some research. I was going to go back and watch the movie just to prove it or disprove it, but I found in several sources it's exactly 1 minute and 17 seconds, and we got about an hour of conversation on it. And this is what I enjoy about Star Wars so much. I mean, this is what nobody can take away from Star Wars is with me is there's so much behind the movies, past the movies, even every character has a backstory and a family and interactions with several people. It's just fantastic.
Well, and all the effort, you know, like I was mentioning with the costume creation, the people who are working behind the scenes to mold and shape the mask or to put the costume together or decide on what kind of a blaster that this wonky looking alien is going to carry. And I'm wondering if that minute and 17 seconds includes the Disney Plus version of A New Hope, because in the Disney Plus version of The New Hope, he's got an extra line. He says McClunky in the Disney Plus version, but in the original version and even in the special edition version, he didn't say McClunky.
Right. Yeah,
So
that's
maybe
true.
it's a minute 19 seconds now.
Yeah, maybe. Even still, it's under a minute and a half.
Yes.
So it's crazy how much lore they can pick out of one character. And
Yeah,
they did it with so many more characters now. I mean, some of the guys were in Rogue One. The Wolfman made it to, well, I don't know if it's the same one, but this made it to Skeleton Crew,
Yep. Well, they put Teak. Teak, who was the little ferryman in Skeleton Crew, he was, well, it wasn't actually Teak, but it was a creature like Teak. And that was in Battle for Endor. The little caffeinated guy who ran around really, really fast. He was the ferryman in, I think it was episode 2 or episode 3 of Skeleton Crew when they were on that pirate asteroid of Port Borgo.
Right.
And each of the new makers have a special connection to some of those old characters. When season 1 of Mandalorian came out, one of the things that we had heard from Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau is the reason they picked the characters to show up on screen because those are the ones that they played with as kids.
Yeah.
They played with the IG-88 toy. They played with the Trandoshan Bosk. They played with the Ugnaughts and stuff like that. So those are the ones that they selected to show up on screen in various ways.
Right.
So it's fun. There's truly is no limit to the amount of creativity and fun and just, I'll say the L word, love for these characters, creatures, aliens from that galaxy far, far away.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. I mean, I'll never not love Star Wars. That's all there is to it.
That's all there is to it. That's probably a great place to wrap up tonight's show. We're always gonna love Star Wars. So when you're not hanging out with me, where's the best place for listeners to find you?
So Table Ready Painting, YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts. I'm on Twitch every Thursday doing something. I'm also playing Dungeons and Dragons with my boys at Lake Clan Legends, and we record every Sunday morning, so you can catch us live on Twitch, or you can catch that on YouTube Thursdays. So that is out. The new episode is out today.
And have you put together any crocheting show notes yet?
No, I didn't. But I did announce the winner. I did record the winners, and we'll find out about those on Tuesday.
Oh, very cool. Very, very cool. I'm excited to find out, who reached out to you.
Yeah, I didn't get as many submissions as I wanted to, but so be it.
You're not done.
Nope. This is only year 1, so keep moving up.
Heck yeah, that's forward. For sure.
So, yeah. And how about you? Where can they find you?
So when I'm not headed across the galaxy with you on this show, on Wednesday nights, you can listen to me or see me on YouTube with Mike Hinton. We put together a little show called The Inflatable Falcon. It's Mike Hinton as a co-host, and occasionally our buddy John Scalise from Ohio. I also put together a solo show, not just Han Solo, but a one-man show called The Rambling Star Wars Fan. And if things go smoothly, another episode of that will be up very, very shortly, talking about nostalgic nuggets related to the Skeleton Crew. Or not the Skeleton Crew, but Skeleton Crew.
Right. All right. Sounds good. So,
thanks for another great episode. And what's that phrase that they say?
This is the way.
This is the way. Thanks, Todd.
Thank you.